I come here from Virginia Tech. I joined Virginia Tech in 2006 under the guise of Collaborate for Creative Technologies in the Arts and Design. I'm not sure if every university has this fetish for acronyms, but I certainly am still finding it hard to learn all of them out in Virginia Tech. But anyways, the collaborative was conceived as a multidisciplinary hub between music, art, communication, and computer science, and we're hoping to also add theater. I don't know if it's officially added yet or not, but I was very excited to be invited to join that group, in part because I've always been attracted to the notion of crossing the boundaries beyond my official home turf, which would be music, and exploring these collaborative and intermedia potential. So my talk today is about ubiquitous interactivity and the notion of bridging arts, education, I guess I can look at here too, right? So education and commerce through creative technologies. So it kind of sounds vague, so I'm going to start off very briefly about what really DICES is. And DICES is another acronym. So that one stands for Digital Interactive Sound and Intermedia Studio, and this one is my fault. I founded the DICES shortly after I joined Virginia Tech with the premise that I wanted to build a studio which would provide this intermedia collaborative framework so that people from various disciplines would feel at home within the same turf, and therefore we would not have all these territorial hurdles that we would necessarily have to go through. So what you see on the screen is basically the sort of the mission of DICES, which basically says by coupling contemporary technology with traditional performance idioms, DICES offers scientific research with focus on new music technologies for the purpose of betterment of the overall quality of life. There's still not a point there, but anyways, as well as a pursuit of new forms of artistic expression with a special focus on interactive multimedia art. So there you go, the longest sentence you probably have heard today. So the idea is it's sort of this cross-pollination of sciences, arts, and their impact. So this all sounds very fancy, but obviously I don't know if that makes it necessarily clear. So the inspirations for this come from various places, and this list is by no stretch of imagination exhaustive, but some of them include obviously Arizona State University with their art, technology, and education program, Stanford University with its strong focus on research in the area of acoustics and psychoacoustics, Princeton University, which goes to embrace technologies in various ways. For instance, recently they've introduced something that's called PLORC, which is another acronym, and that one stands for Princeton Laptop Orchestra. And it consists of 15 laptops, which are basically performing on stage like a traditional orchestra. Very, very exciting, very interesting. And of course, there are others in there which I currently cannot think of, so I hope that those 3 dots will suffice there. Projects which also have inspired me a lot are free open source community projects. I'm very, very much a geek as far as the computers are concerned, and I love Linux. If you're not familiar with it, it's a kind of a free, actually not kind of, but it is actually truly free operating system you can freely download with a bunch of software from the internet. And what better way to disseminate technology without having any cost overhead? So instead of dealing with blue screens from Windows or any other inconvenient things that can come your way, Linux is a really wonderful way to work. And I was quite inspired by it because I found that through collaboration, this entire operating system, which consists of millions and millions of lines of code, just works. And people have been contributing from all over the world. There was no financial structure in place. It was simply the notion that you could access the source code and fix the problems yourself was truly liberating, and especially for me, because so many times in my career I would stumble across some wonderful commercial software which I would spend tons of money on, and then find out in a week or two that the company went under, and the critical bug that's preventing me from using it just will never come to see the light of day. I'm sorry. So other things as projects that inspired. Some of them kind of recursively is the e-textiles project led by Tom Martin at Virginia Tech, which deals with this concept of how do we rejuvenate the commerce and industry in the southwestern Virginia. In this case, they were dealing with the concept of introducing technology into the textile industry, so therefore it would be a niche that would be hard to compete against. Other things that come, they actually are quite recent influences, are ambient devices and a project called Butterfly Dragonfly, which deals with the concept of introducing art in a way where it is not only just art, but it also conveys critical information. So think of it basically having a painting on a wall of a CEO of a corporation where there is, let's say, a beautiful vista, maybe Blue Ridge Mountains, for instance, and maybe there's a river, and on the river there's a boat, and every time the stock options are not very well, the boat is maybe more downstream, and when it's well, it's more upstream, right? And now imagine the possibilities, right? Not only do you have a piece of art on the wall, but you also have a piece of information which, in a very unobtrusive fashion, can provide you with insightful information. I've seen some other silly examples, like I've seen an umbrella which has this little sensor which checks via a wireless web access what's the weather today. So if it's rainy, then it glows. So when you're on your way out of your house, if it glows, you know you have to pick it up and take it with you, kind of thing. So I think that the little caveat there is obviously, where do you draw the line? Where do you say this is art or this is just artful design, right? And that's something that I continue to explore, and I find it not so much of a struggle, but as much as an exciting form of exploration. And I think key concepts that really have driven me towards this kind of approach to my interest and career is this idea of interactivity. Unlike light switch, which is reactive in nature, and we commonly use these keywords which are very popular, like interactivity. It sounds so fancy. Collaboration sounds so fancy too, but truth of the matter is that we really don't, collaborating is really tough, and not all of us are necessarily well equipped to do that. And same thing was with interactivity. Unlike a light switch where you flip the light switch and it just does something, interactive light switch would be one where you walk in the room, you will never have to even flip it in the first place. It will also sense that you have a migraine, so it will dim the lights and maybe turn on some nice music for you too, right? So there's that kind of a difference, where there's a cognition within technology to help us better our lives, and that's where it goes back to the mission of DICES. And of course, the concept of multimedia, even though my home is really in music, I like to think of myself as somebody who goes beyond that and tries to integrate these other things. And partially, I feel like I'm in a very opportune time, living in a very opportune time, because, oops, what did I do? Never mind. Oh, you saw it. Now, darn it. No. I feel like, I live in a very opportune time, because whereas in old times, even just 20 years ago, if I were to write an orchestral piece, I would spend next 2 months just, writing out all the parts for the orchestra. Now I have a computer program which does it in a split second, right? So I can spend those 2 months learning other things that really I consider to be fun and engaging. And so one of them, obviously, sustainability or intelligent design and things like that. So even though I would like to share a lot of cool things that at least I think are really cool things, either done by others or some of my humble contributions, I really just, because of the sake of time, I'll just show you one quick example of what I mean by this. And this one is not necessarily art, but it is really a combination of art and design and betterment of overall quality of life. How am I with time? Am I going over already, or? Okay, thank you. So this particular project I was introduced to when I was approached by Associate Dean of the Wake Forest University MBA program, and they are building a new, in conjunction with Wachovia Corporation, they're building a new 7-building complex in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. And one particular floor will be shared between Wake Forest in the evening and Wachovia during the day. And they were very interested in making this high-tech, top-notch facility which would explore every possible thing that would make the thing better. And particularly intelligent, sustainable space, and space that not only provides you with shelter against the rain and elements, but also tells you all kinds of other things. So think back that example of a painting that tells you more than just provides a soothing image on the wall. So in this case, they were really looking for fostering a sense of collaboration, which obviously ties in very well with educational concept, which we've been talking about here. And I must admit that I've been totally blown away by everything that I've seen so far in this, and I'm so inspired and wired, and I can't wait until I start working more. So, anyways, I think a lot of those concepts have been very well addressed by the speakers before me, but in this case, basically, the concept was really that the interest was how to foster the sense of collaboration. And so I initially came up with this idea, hey, let's come up with these artistic installations which all tell a story while also providing a sort of sense of immersion that common space wouldn't. So imagine walking down the hallway and generating a wave of water sound that splashes down the corridor when it hits the wall. And it's being simulated by an array of speakers. So suddenly somebody sitting in this corner of the hallway would hear through those energies how many people are actually leaving and arriving to the floor. So therefore it would be a metaphor of a collaborative energies currently present on the floor. Or imagine a cafe where you could, with a swipe of your ID card, turn on the light and immediately notify everybody else who is patched into that network that you are there as an avatar present in this space with certain skill sets. So if somebody wants to collaborate, they could look up this cafe and say, hey, I need such and such person, and there's 3 persons there right now, so I'll instant message and tell them, hey, wait for me, I'll be there, I need to talk to you about something, right? So these are the things that are really exciting, and so when I proposed this to some of these isolated modules to the team there, it was ecstatic. Of course, when the dollar figure fell, then suddenly the excitement was kind of gone. So then we kind of ended up in a limbo for a little while, and then suddenly, the question was, there was undoubtedly interest in it. It was just a matter of how do we get the resources. So the question was raised: what could we do with this lesser amount of money? And then I suggested something that I really didn't think much about at that point in time, which was just kind of out of the blue. I said, you know what, how about we build a video game where you can traverse the space and we'll rig it with this kind of Wizard of Oz thing, because really, if you put it in the video game, nobody's going to question you, how will this sound travel down the hallway? The algorithm for it is irrelevant. Maybe it could even glow for all we care. Sound doesn't glow generally. So all of these things we can build into it and explore what would this do. And then when we navigate this space, it would be a lot more affordable, less, it would be more risk averse, and then based on that we could maybe draw conclusions to say, hey, let's take it to the next step, and maybe we can even draw more support. And right now, even though the jury is still out whether this has been successful, this project is nearing completion, and we do know that Wachovia Corporation is very much interested in it, which I think is already at least not a bad sign because of their very much risk-averse nature, so I think that's a good thing. So what I'm going to show you here is a quick demonstration of that, and provided I have time, am I okay with that? So, we'll enter the world of first-person gaming here for a second, and play. So the whole idea is that we got the blueprints from the architects, how the floor would look like. We rigged it with all the nice stuff that it looks cool, and we started rigging it with all the other things to describe what this would do, ostensibly as we envision it. Of course, by no stretch of imagination is this all-exhaustive implementation of it. It's more kind of like a virtual sandbox to explore these things. But I think, if we cling on to this notion, seeing is believing, I think this would at least help traverse some of these more complex notions that we've been exploring. So as you exit this kind of elevator, you go out, and there's a reception desk. Now, the persons in here are kind of shaded funnily because we didn't have time to actually model them any more complex than that, so they look kind of like Play-Doh people or something. But anyway, so you can walk around this space, and you can hear actually even footsteps. I'm really proud of that part. So. And you can even run. There's some art there, well, sort of art. And so first thing you come in here is, hey, look, there's a thing on the wall, and there's a little red dot, and that must be me. So I go around, and sure enough, as I go around the map, you can see that little red dot moving around. So imagine what would this be if you had, something that would show how the collaborative energies manifest themselves across the floor. So the participants in the space become part of the art. And so now this is where the bizarre stuff starts happening. So I'm shooting these blue orbs, and they're not really blue orbs, they're just visual representations where the sound is actually traveling, because when we initially made this as a sound of water just splashing against the wall, it was kind of hard to trace that down because the sound engine within this system is not necessarily the greatest. So we added those visual cues just to provide the insight of what's going on. So faster I walk, more water I push, so therefore there it goes, and there's splashing, right? So here we are in this L-shaped corridor between the Cafe X. Oops, that's not my dinner, that's just the cue there. So basically in this corridor, it would be kind of a converging point. We call this a Zen Garden or Zen Refuge here with this little virtual fountain. Now, they told us that under this floor would be a huge server rack room, so which means that we could not put any water stuff there because otherwise we could be spending millions of dollars just making sure that nothing breaks down. But so we would design a virtual fountain, which is kind of like a Zen fountain. You can look into it and it looks, like a fountain, except there's nothing really kind of squirting out. But anyways, so but it's nonetheless kind of a fountain, right? And so this is like the place of refuge where you could kind of relax between the, the Cafe X where, there's a lot of collaborative talk, energy, and stuff like that. And of course, this hallway here where we simply enjoy this landscape. Now, there's this gentleman here, and if you run by him, every so often.
Hey, what's the rush, mister?
Okay. So he says, he doesn't like people running down the corridor. Okay, so we come here, and then we finally enter the Cafe X area. And here's this art on the wall. Right now it's very linear. It's not still interactive. Like I said, there are some parts of this that are not finished yet. And so this would be like a landscape which would be affected by all kinds of things. So imagine, stock market is not doing good. Well, it gets kind of misty or cloudy or whatever. And then, there could be change of time of day and stuff like that. But also imagine situations where I think the gaming industry today teaches us that we can be so enamored by this concept of I'm doing something productive. I'm playing World of Warcraft and I'm a level 60 wizard. You know what? You've just killed 5 trees with all the energy you spent running a computer, but you haven't really accomplished anything. Yet we spend millions of dollars doing that, right? Paying monthly subscriptions. So as soon as we become stakeholders in something, suddenly we are attached to it. Somehow we get a sense of accomplishment, right? So I've been exploring this notion, how do we create a performance art where audience participates in it, So actually there's a piece that I wrote for my colleague of mine for computer and voice, and what happens is that the audience at one point is asked to say their first names in form of affirming their presence and therefore their participation as part of a community. And then as the piece unfolds, they are not aware that they are actually being recorded. Later they hear their kind of names jumbled on top of everything that is being produced by computer and sung. And we've gotten some quite positive feedback based on that. Simply, I think, because suddenly audience is a stakeholder in this. And I think that makes a whole world of difference. So likewise, here we have also a situation where there's a classroom inside here. And in that classroom, the way how we're envisioning this is that you would go in there, you would take a class, and based on your accomplishments, you would have a little avatar whose skill set would then be increasing, right? And so as you get more points that increase, you could apply that to the art. So you could build more trees into this art, or you can change the, the hill structure or whatever else. And the other thing would be that would be encouraging collaborative effort would be basically if 2 people polled their energies at the same time or their tokens that they earn in the classroom, they would be actually multiplying value, right? So again, we'll be encouraging people to collaborate on that level. So what we're using in this metaphor here is basically you can come to those different things like Wall Street Journal and then you would click here and they would do something, except we haven't built that, so right now it doesn't do anything. Here's a lamp which talks about sustainability, the lights that only come on when you need them. And of course we have the iPhone. I love those things. I don't have one, but they're really nice. But anyways, you can see that we cannot use that one because the way how it's structured, you would have to first go in the classroom and earn your tokens before you can use it here. And this is the most fun one, which is the laptop one. It's just kind of redundant, like I'm playing on a laptop to play with a laptop. So, but what you can do is, here we can say, what, maybe we can also explore what the users are currently Googling for, right? So let's say I'm Googling for Google, which is not very smart. But so if I do that, you can notice there in the farther corner on that wall art, there is a Google word that's traveling across that river, right? So I say air, and then, oh, it's okay, right? Let's see, it's okay, right? And then what else? I don't know, Wachovia, Hello. Oh, it got misty now, so we can't see anything. So anyways, we can do it all day long, but what happens is really we're leaving a trace of words that travel through this virtual fountain, travel through the walls, and the smaller words travel faster, bigger ones travel slower because of their significance. Now I have a little cheat where I can kind of teleport through the levels back to the fountain. But if you go back to the fountain here, you can notice that there's also those words here. So there's all this interconnectedness between these different installations, and what that really means artistically, we don't know yet. This is just kind of like, hey, you know, wouldn't this be cool, and let's see where that takes us, right? And so, you know, but certainly we're thinking about those things. We're not just trying to make this a gimmick, you know, but we really are conscious to think about it, but we're fully aware that this is just a what-if kind of scenario, right? And so the last thing that's left is obviously the classroom. So here we have our little classroom. It says, hey, go there, okay. So we come here, the light comes on, and now this is where we start learning about, well, I'm going to just make this quieter. Now, this is where the reel of recording would come on. Right now, there's just a reel of music. So as music plays, you would learn more about how you learn these tokens, and then you can either skip this music and get your token right away if you're impatient, or you might just listen to music for a while. But anyways, the whole concept is that this is just a metaphor, again, where you would go into a classroom, you would understand that you're engaged there intellectually, you earn tokens, and once you're done, you get a little check mark, and yay, you know, we got our A+, and then we go back to our iPhone, and this time, iPhone enables us to then alter the landscape, right? So basically what this is kind of a glorified gaming interface, which actually allows us to explore this what-if scenario, and what would this really mean if we applied it in the real world setting without necessarily expensive prototyping that would take place otherwise. So why am I sharing this all with you? Well, I think that there's a lot of connections between this and what has been mentioned earlier today. You know, first of all, we're talking about education. How do we engage students? Well, if they get a sense of accomplishment, maybe we could have a mural, like a graffiti wall, where they could use those tokens of accomplishments anonymously, so you know there's no bullying or anything like that, and they could actually apply it there to express themselves. So there's a sense of accomplishment that would drive their interest, right? So suddenly art becomes the driving force behind their education, and vice versa. Likewise, it could be also utilized in situations where I lost my train of thought. It could be used basically in situations where, of course, imagine the gaming industry right now. I heard recently that one of the big seller games that just were released on gaming consoles made $500 million in the first week of sales. Okay, so that means that the gaming industry right now is surpassing movie industry by order of magnitude. Okay, they have such a large budget they hire out an entire London Symphony Orchestra just to do their soundtrack. Okay, so basically that's the kind of budget we're working off of right now in the gaming industry. So imagine engaging students in various regions to work on these kinds of projects where they're not only engaging to learn technical skills, but they're also engaging in understanding art and cross-pollinating these multimodal relationships. The fact of the matter is that the gaming design is not geographically confined. Just like Linux operating system, it could be all across the place. So we could have a huge gaming industry here in South Boston collaborating with Electronic Arts in California and Virginia Tech and anywhere else. So these are all the little things that could be easily explored for various purposes. So anyways, I'll stop there. I think I'm way over time anyway. So, all right, well, thank you very much.